welcome everyone to another Thursday Thoughts. Definitely happy to be here with you. Kevin is actually outside, and I think he took notes from our last Thursday Thoughts. He's looking clean and sharp. No more disheveled hair, Kevin. Look like you got a makeover. What's going on?
It was that time of the week. I figured it was time to shower.
It wasn't from the notes and lessons that Laura Templeton gave us about Zoom tips. It just so happens Kev decided to shave.
No, it definitely helped. I mean, Laura did a great job last week. Talking about the tips for how to network during this pandemic that we're in, and all trying to do it remotely. And she did have some great feedback, and some of what she said I think was subliminally maybe targeted towards me. I've been enjoying bringing the at-home look to some of these patients. I know I've gotten a lot of feedback of what kind of hairdo and what's the beard going to look like today. But I decided let's really keep people on their toes and actually clean up today, which no one expected from me, right? So
definitely not me.
So here's the clean look today, and what's it going to look like next time? You'll have to tune in and find out.
Yeah, we'll see. Super excited to kick this one off. Actually, one of our guests last week was Gary Kurtis, who's our presenting speaker today. And as always, we do these conversations every other Thursday, and it's an open discussion. So anyone who's joining us on Facebook right now, feel free to leave a question or comment in the in the comments, I should say. And of course, if you're on Zoom, feel free to ask a question at any point. But yeah, super excited to introduce Gary Kurtis to everybody. I actually met Gary through the Monaco Chamber of Commerce, and I'll read just a little bit about Gary and his business before introducing him and allowing him to speak for himself. But again, we have Gary Kurtis here. He's the founder of Sales Tips 101, which offers real-world practical tips so you can have the greatest chance of success in your business venture. Gary has had a successful career spanning several decades as a top sales leader and sales manager. With Sales Tips 101, Gary provides coaching and workshops for organizations and groups of all sizes. During these challenging times, Gary offers free initial consultations to review your business's sales objectives and challenges. And his passion is helping individuals new to sales understand what works and what doesn't, and providing guidance to help them succeed. And me being also a sales guy, I've been in sales for over a decade now. It was really refreshing to chat the first time I spoke with Gary because we kind of spoke that same language. But I noticed what Gary does a great job of doing is able to relay some of the sales needs and goals and tips to people who don't speak the sales language. I think that's really, really important when you're not really familiar with sales and you just know your business. A guy like Gary can really kind of help, bridge that gap and get you to really understand what you need to be focused on. But I'll turn it over to Gary to give your own introduction. And again, thank you for joining us this week.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. I'm excited to be here and look forward to having this, as I call it, conversation with everybody that is joining today.
Indeed. So as you know, we here at Navitas, me and Kevin, we're a marketing firm. And one thing that we were talking when I chatted with Gary is how sales and marketing really go hand in hand. There's a lot of different things that we collectively talk about and focus on, but it's coming from different angles. So, again, very different elements, but both sales and marketing need to work hand in hand for business success. And these are the areas that we kind of pinpointed that we all seem to harp on or talk about often with our clientele. The first one, very important, messaging and communication. Kevin, I'll even let you touch on that because, whether it be inbound marketing, whether it be newsletters, whether it be social media, that's a very vital and big part of our business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, years ago, and I'll even, speak from personal experience, before I, started Navitas and, ended up here on the agency side, I worked on the corporate side and I was on our marketing team, but I was actually in a role where I was managing two different sales forces. And it was always surprising to me, certain tasks that very clearly needed to be done, but there was always this battle between Should the sales team have been doing that, or should the marketing team have been doing that? And the last thing you want to do is thing that one and have it performed by the other side. And what I've enjoyed over the years is since then is there's definitely been this combination of the sales and marketing, and the realization that one can't survive with the other. We're a big fan at Navitas of the inbound marketing methodology, as Zack just mentioned, which the concept is, rather than being super forceful and being outbound and trying to tell people you need to work with us, it's putting out it's putting out different resources, it's putting out different materials, events like these. People realize need the services or products that you're offering and having them come inbound to you. So, it kind of lessens that harder sales approach and softens it a little bit. It allows, your sales team to form, more relationships and, be there for you instead of trying to convince you that, you need what I offer, whatever that may be. So, I think it softens the messaging, it softens the communication, and, finally we're at a place where, did that come from the marketing team or the sales team? The answer is, doesn't really matter anymore.
So Kevin, this is Garrett. I'd like to say that one who has a undergraduate degree in marketing, but spent his whole career in sales, I really understand the connection, the close connection between the two. And one of the things I'm hoping that everybody gathers from today's session is I'm going to go through a lot of ideas, strategies, things that work. And sales, what I'm giving you is these are things that, a lot of things that work and don't work. But then what I see you guys doing is providing okay, this is what to do and what not to do, but this is how to do it. And you guys have a lot of great tools on then how to carry it forward and how to implement some questions I make.
Perfect. Yep.
Indeed. So one thing we'll kind of jump into. So, and again, it was, I think you named your company perfectly, Gary, because that's what folks need. They need sales advice and tips to push themselves forward. But you have a small business with great products, services, and staff, but do you have all the resources and efforts to get the desired results? And there were two questions that you focused on that you would ask a customer. Can you elaborate on these questions a little bit and why you asked those?
Absolutely. So every organization, there's things, what you do. There's a couple of things that we all agree on, that we all sort of have the same concerns. Number one, we're all concerned about, let's face it, what are we doing to get new customers? What are we doing to keep our customers? And then you have all kinds of efforts to do that. And then the question is, do all of your efforts work all the time? Does everybody always say yes, yes, yes? And the answer is no. You probably get a lot more no's than yeses. And what are you doing to try to overcome some of that resistance that you are going to get to whatever effort that you're putting in? And I think everybody deals with this.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the big things that we're dealing with now, just in today's world, is pivoting, is understanding that not only do you might not have the right efforts to get the clientele, but like the clientele's goals are changing, their environment's changing. So now you have to do even more adjusting and figuring out, how do I get my current target base to be interested and invested in my offering or services when their focus is completely different than it was 5 months ago, 6 months ago. So you kind of have to be in that consistent evaluating and adjusting period for sales. And you tell me this, Gary, I'm assuming for the majority of businesses, sales now is a much more daunting, a much more difficult task due to COVID-19 than it was beforehand. I mean, clearly there are some industries that actually, for lack of a better word, benefit from the current environment, a la Zoom. I'm sure their sales went up. But for the most part, most businesses, it's a struggle during this time period.
It absolutely is. I mean, this is going to be a challenge, and the strong will survive. And what most organizations don't understand is most people are salespeople. They have, even if I'm a sales representative, everybody is in sales. And most people, if they understand that, then the next hurdle is, well, what do I do? I haven't had the sales training. I don't have the expertise. How am I going to do this? And by the way, how am I going to do this a lot better than all my competitors? It's a real challenge, and it is much more challenging today. But
Right.
there's a lot of things you can do to be very successful.
Speaking of those challenges, we made this list of hurdles that you've come across or that you've seen. And I'll actually put them all on the screen here and we can kind of dive in a little bit. So I, all of these I've actually come encounter with, whether it be for my own personal business or, having seen clients with it, but touch on some of these sales hurdles that, you see most commonly with small business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can be doing all the great things that you think work, things that maybe did work at one time, and then all of a sudden you realize, well, wait a minute, maybe these things I'm killing myself are not getting me what I need. Maybe I'm getting limited results. Maybe I just don't understand with the current customers today how I really should approach them. Is my messaging really getting to them? What about my competition? Doing and overcome what the competition is doing. How about my customers? What am I really doing to reward my customers? Because that's where most of my revenue continues to come from. Is my value that I'm presenting, everybody hears about elevator pitch. Do I really have the right kind of elevator pitch where it's really working? And then the most important thing is every organization, you should have short and long-term goals. And how do you really understand what they should be? And how do you manage it to make sure that that train is really staying on the tracks, it's not falling off, and if it does, how do I get it back on? So these are all challenges. Everybody does this. We're in the same boat. We all deal with the same challenges.
Indeed, indeed. And the part
And
that
my grandfather used to always say that every business is the same. It's just the end product that's different.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. We're all doing the same thing. We're all trying to be successful at whatever it is that we do, whether it's a product, a solution, or both, or a service.
Awesome, awesome. And I know this is kind of where your bread and butter lies is how do we fix it? What are the advice? What are the tips that you're able to help in rectifying the shit? So you gave us 4 that we can dive a little into. We'll just go to the first one. You can give us some details about this. Identifying and highlighting your differentiators. How do you go about helping a business do that?
So one of the things that I love to hear is when I sit down, and I do a lot with the chamber. I'm on a committee called Business Builders Committee. We meet regularly, and one of the exercises that we'll do, particularly when we have new people join the group, is we'll go around the room and everybody introduces themselves and says, what do you do? And I love when I hear, I'm John Jones. I work for the XYZ insurance company. We're the best at what we do. I'm Joe Jones, and I sell, I work for this bank. We're the leader at this. We're the best at what we do. I listen to that and I haven't heard one thing yet that tells me what is different about you, what makes you so special and different from everybody else. And that's what you have to understand. It can't just be what you do. It's what you do that's different. We all sound the same. When I hear we're the best at this, we're the leaders at this, people don't care about that stuff. What they really want to know is how you can help them because you are so different and you offer something that's different. One of the things I like every organization to understand is you're all focused, as you rightfully should, on what you do. And your goal is to increase sales organization, make sure that things are moving in the right direction. Well, guess what? Your customers, they have the exact same goals. They're trying to do the exact same thing. But do you really know what those goals are so you can help them? We're all in the same boat together. So we really try to focus on that and really how you can understand, how you can really help your customer. Now, the other thing that I do is I try to get everybody to focus on, if you understand what makes you different, what makes you stand out, then you want to ask the next important question. Who is your ideal customer based on what you really want? Because sell to everybody. You don't want to try to sell to everybody. There's a certain market you're trying to go after. Do you really understand that market, who your ideal customer really is? And it's really important that they understand that.
Right, right. One thing, and I'll ask this question to you, Kevin. What do you think a major differentiator for Navitas is? And I'll ask it also with kind of having my own personal answer that I love it because I hear you say this, quite often. I say our differentiator is diversity, and I'm not talking about diversity of people. I think it's, which we do have, so I like that, but diversity of skill set and clientele. Because like there's so many times, let's say for example, we meet with someone who owns a beauty salon and they need a new website, and they want to know, hey, how many websites have you done for beauty salons? And let's say we've done one. That's cool, but it's the diversity of, we've done websites for every single different type of business that we can create literally custom whatever you might be thinking of, and that being a differentiator for us. There's some companies who just do websites for dental offices, and some dental office or a dentist going to them wanting a website, they have to understand that their website's not going to be that much different from a lot of their competition out there. But if they had us do it, it's going to have elements that these other people didn't do, because we have that differentiator of having done sites for municipal, for, entrepreneurs, for schools, for all these different types of industries and things. And I think that's probably one of our main differentiators, which, I love it when you kind of phrase it, when you educate people on that. But what would you say would be a big differentiator for us?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. I mean, I think that's definitely big. And I always say, yes, there are advantages to working with agencies that may focus on a very specific vertical. There is an area of expertise, that have. But just as you said, it's what differentiates us is our ability to differentiate our clients, because we're not tunnel vision. We're not stuck in one channel. I think the other big differentiator that we have is the support, the strength of our printing company, the Homer Group. There's a lot of agencies out there that still realize that print marketing is important, but that doesn't mean that they really get it. There are designers who don't, they know how to design for print, but don't think about what's really going to look good with the different printing processes. And sometimes a great design doesn't print well, or just the fact that when we do campaign brochures or whatever, like, we're not outsourcing it, we're doing it ourselves. The Homer Group is ours, and I think that's a rare thing to see. So I always say there's a lot of good agencies out there. There's a lot of competition, so anybody who's surviving, they're doing a good job. But I think a huge strength of Navitas is the fact that we have the Homer Group. And on the other side, a big differentiator for the Homer Group, our printing company, is, I think, the strength of the agency. I think it goes both ways there.
Right. This next point, so I'm going to get you to define this first, Gary, because having been in sales a long time, I know a lot of folks, even colleagues in sales, aren't quite sure what this means. But tell us first, what is a buying atmosphere, and then we can go into developing questions for it.
Okay, great. So one of the questions that I often ask any organization is, what if you were presented with a list of companies that these companies, we know for a fact that they need exactly what it is that you offer? Wouldn't that be great? I mean, does everybody have that in front of them every single day? You open up and someone's throwing you a list. Here they are. They're trying to buy your product. They need you. Wouldn't that be great?
Right.
Do it. And the way to do it is, instead of trying to, as most people do, trying to quote unquote sell them what you think they need, it's to create what I call a buying atmosphere. And I'm going to go into this in a few minutes, but it's an atmosphere where rather than you go to them, they're actually coming to you. And it makes such a difference when you can do that.
Interesting. So when you're talking about questions to foster that, can you give us some examples of what you would ask to get someone into that space?
Right. So one of the things that is really important, and I did this an awful lot of my career, is everybody knows that ideally you want to try to ask questions that will get you where you want to go. So how do you do that? One of the things you can do is, it's amazing how people realize when they do this, how effective it can be. do research. If you're going after a particular organization or a particular market, there's tons and tons of ways that you can do research. I spent a number of years, for example, selling to the federal government. The federal government, they put out these strategic plans. I would go through them. Some of these are 200 or 300 pages, and I pull out things from plans that were things that I knew that I could help them with, because these are our challenges, these are our initiatives, these are things that we're trying to do. So you want to learn as much as you can ahead of time about the market you're going after. Once you've done that, then let's go back to the first point. What makes you different? What are your strengths?
Mm-hmm.
Then what I talk about is what I call the magnet effect. So for example, if I know that what I do really well, and I've done my research, and I know that this organization has these specific needs, doesn't it make it easy to know what kind of intelligent questions I should be asking? So I happen to ask by pure chance some questions that they say, oh yeah, boy, that's something that would really be a benefit to us. We're trying to deal with this right now. It really helps you to ask relevant questions that are going to create that magnet effect. And when you can do that, it really helps to create that buying atmosphere, because then at that point, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just there asking some questions. And based on the way you've answered the questions, you said, hey, this is something that really makes a lot of sense because we're trying to address this right now.
Right, right.
And I think sometimes just some questions could determine that you're not the right fit. So,
Absolutely.
having some of that pre-qualification, it gets you to a point where, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want you to waste my time. And I think that's something we can both respect. And, maybe I have a better connection for you. I may not be the right person to help you, but here's someone who is. And, that way you're still strengthening that relationship. You're still building and establishing and strengthening, a certain bond, even if it's not coming to fruition for you today.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kevin, because the other thing I always emphasize is that, and I started out originally as a psychology major, and sales is nothing more. It's all psychology. What is it? It's developing a relationship. And to develop a relationship, it's got to be based on, I'm there to try to help you to get where you're trying to go. And very often I would meet with someone, and if I sense that there might be even a little bit of resistance, I'll say to them, you know what, we're going to play a game. We're going to call it Let's Make a Deal. And what I mean by that is we're going to agree right up front that I'm here to try to help you. I'm going to ask you some questions. I don't know anything about you. I still have to play dumb, even though I do have some questions I want to ask. And we'll come to an agreement that if I can't help you, no hard feelings. We'll shake hands. Of course, can't walk away, say, no hard feelings whatsoever. And it sort of lowers, takes away a lot of that pressure that a lot of people have, because one of the reasons that I originally got into sales, and one of the reasons that I think I was very good at it, is because I know this is going to sound strange. I hated salespeople. Most salespeople I thought were terrible. Yeah. And I used to really try to take advantage of that and say, I'm not like them. I do things differently. I'm here to try to develop a meaningful relationship to see how I can help. And that's really how it should be based.
Right.
Yeah, I know at Navitas, we call it business development. We try to avoid sales, negative connotation. As you said, we don't like salespeople. But business development, that sounds softer. That's someone that I may want to talk to.
Correct.
Right. Next we had on here, which kind of harps back to something we mentioned earlier, was evaluating your materials and their effectiveness. And this is everything from, I would imagine like one sheets, marketing collateral you would send out, whether it be via mail, things you might put on social media. That's one of these major tips you have here, Gary, is evaluating that material. You want to dive a little more into that?
Yeah, an extension of that is your messaging too. So, one of the things that I would often try to emphasize is that I would see salespeople that would go to meet with someone, and nothing against what you guys do, because you guys do a great job at putting together all your materials and so forth. But what they would do is, rather than do their job, they would leave a bunch of brochures, and they would think that the brochures are there to do their job for them. And I would try to communicate to them that, well, two things. First of all, the brochures are not a substitute for sales. You're there to do your job if you're a professional. Number two, if you go with a bunch of brochures, you may as well walk in with a little trash barrel with it, because guess where those brochures are going to end up? It's just such a waste of money. I always talk about the importance of having an effective message, a compelling message that's going to provide them with a reason to want to see you, a reason to bring you in, and so forth. And one of the many examples that I give is when I first started in sales, I had a buddy of mine that was selling life insurance. And I said, thank God I don't sell life insurance. I would never, ever want to do it. I can't imagine how difficult it is to sell a product like that. And he said, it's actually, what do you, he says, well, I don't sell life insurance. I said, what do you mean you don't sell life insurance? I see exactly what you do. He says, no, I don't. What do you do? He said, well, what I do is I sit down with someone and I try to get as much information about them, because it's all focused on them, as I possibly can. And I'll ask them, what's important to you? What are your goals in life? Where do you want to go? And then I ask the most important question. Are you there right now? No. Great. What's keeping you from getting there? Well, guess what I can do? I can help you to get to where you want to go. Now, he never talks about insurance, just talks about helping that individual get to where they want to go. And it's all about messaging. It's all about taking the time to really understand what's important to that customer and helping them to get to where they want to go. And if they see you that way, they see you as their ally. It's all about being on the same page. And consultative sales is nothing more than, it's a very fancy way of saying, I'm here to try to develop that relationship where we're working together in a partnership, and I'm here to help you. And when you bring ideas to someone that are perceived as ideas to them, me, to help you, it makes all the difference in the world. When I would ever contact anybody, even whether it's a follow-up, whether it's initial contacts and so forth, I would always look at my messaging and say to myself, does this messaging come across as important to me, or is it important to them? And I always give someone the reason to respond is it's all about you. It's not about me. You've always got to think that way, because that's how people think, and that's how people are concerned about what's in it for me.
Right. Last tip we have on here is use your current customers as advocates. This screams testimonial to me, but give us some more detail what you mean here.
So one of the things that a lot of organizations don't do is they don't realize the value of their customers. They don't take care of their customers. We all watched The Wizard of Oz. Remember at the very end, what did the witch say to Dorothy? She says, you've always had the slippers all along. You've always had the ability to do this. A lot of us just don't realize that our customers are the best way to get revenue. Number one, there's so much that we can go back to, and we can say there's additional things that we can do. We can upsell you. They are the best salespeople with the right on your sales team, because if they are selling a product for you, selling your services for you, don't you think that it provides a lot more legitimacy than if you're trying to do it? Because of course you're always going to be perceived as a quote unquote salespeople. So they're great to be able to not only sell more to, but to be able to help you to sell. I always talk about, and I always ask the question, are you really giving your customers what I call the golden goose treatment, the silver tray service treatment? They should be treated like gods. Take care of them. Make it very personal. I mean, I would always try to learn as much as I could customer personal notes. I would give them personalized gifts. I would do everything I could to make them feel like they're the only customer I've got. And if you can develop that kind of relationship, they will do everything for you. One of the things that is great, if you do this for a customer, I guarantee you, you've got a customer for life. Get them a lead. Do anything you can to get them some business. Boy, what a difference that can make. I always talk about how to get referrals, because everybody knows, geez, it would be really nice to be able to get referrals and so forth. And I like to tell this very simple story. I was editor many years ago, and I remember the guy's name was Henry. And I met with him a number of times, and it was one time I was meeting with him, and he had a stack of my stuff on his desk, and he had a stack of my competitors' stuff, two other stacks. And I looked at him and I said, Henry, how are you going to make the decision? Because you're hearing great things from all of us. And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, let me give you a suggestion. I said, why don't you go by your references? Don't go by me, because we're all telling you great things. We're salespeople, right? The reference. What did I do? I took the time to really understand and learn what was most important to him. That's the key. You got to understand, what is he looking for? What's most important? And then based on that, I had a list of customers that I felt would be a great fit because they had similar needs. Then I would go to those customers and I would say, I'd like to use you as a reference. Henry is going to call you. And this is the key, this is what he would like to hear. These are the things that are important to him. So I did that. Well, fast forward, I got the sale. And afterwards, long after the sale was made, and I said, I'm just curious, how did you make the decision? He said, well, it was a really hard decision, but I took your advice and I called all the references for all of you. And of course, nobody gives up bad references. But he said, there was something different about your references. Your references, I just heard exactly what I needed to hear. And it was just so much more enthusiastic. And I had to sit there and, keep a straight face. But it shows you that, your customers can be great advocates for you if you utilize them the right way. The other thing I do, and this is very effective, is your customers. Now, people think, well, surveying our customers, everybody does that. That's because we want to find out, are we doing a good job? Okay, that's one of the things you can do with a survey. But there's other things. A survey can be a great sales and marketing tool, because what would I do on the survey? I would not only ask for their feedback, but I would also list, hey, there's a lot of other needs that we can help you to address. Can you please check off any of these needs that you think you might have? And they check them off and send them back to me. Guess what they become? Sales leads. And then the other thing I would do is, if you're happy with us, there are organizations you can think of that might also benefit from what we do. And they give me names. Again, leads. I call them up and I'd say, John Johnson, they love us, and they thought that you would love us too. What do you think?
Right.
So, customers are just a great, great source to take advantage of if you do it the right way.
No, awesome. One of the things I often would do, in my sales days, was, once I had a client in a certain industry, I would call other businesses in that same industry and mention that client, likes our service or purchased our service, almost to give them that feeling that, well, geez, if our competition is using this to get a leg up, we should too. And I would use that as a way, basically use that existing customer as a way to try to bring on other similar customers, which I think is right in line with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And actually, as an extension of that, and I was going to mention this earlier, Zach, we've gone through a lot of what to do, but the harder thing for everybody is how to do it. And one of the things that I've had a lot of success with is, how do you approach someone to get that meeting? And I know that a particular organization has a need that's very similar to a customer that I just worked with. My approach becomes, hey, all I want to do is, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods anyway. We did some great work for the XYZ Corporation. They're just like you. They have the exact same needs. And what I'd like to do is simply just share with you what we did for them, so we can find out if you think that there could be a fit. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to see if you think there could be a fit, because I'm trying to make it very, very, low key and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great technique to get. Just want to get your opinion and so forth. And 9 out of 10 times, if I did my homework and it's really true that they have similar needs, and I know going in there that I'm confident that I can help them, I would always come out of there with the beginning of a sales cycle. It would always work.
Right. Right. You know who does that better than anybody? And it seems like it's effortless. When someone in your neighborhood gets like a new roof or like windows, and then you get the sign on the lawn that says, hey, or you get door hangers that say, we've just done some houses in your area, basically encouraging you to go check it out when you drive by. And then they put the signs on their lawn saying that this work was done by us, and we're in your area, we can help you. Like, I wish every business could offer something like that. Like, it'd be a lot easier, but they seem to get a lot of traction from it because they do it all the time.
Exactly. But again, the key is the more that you can make it tailored to them, the better. You want to get away from general into, we know that you are just like them, that you have these specific needs that happen to be what we do really well, getting back to those differentiators. And if you can do that and create what I call that magnet effect, it just makes it so much effective human. All of us would love to have someone approach us and say, hey, we know that this is something that you have a need for, that you're trying to accomplish right now. We just did the exact same thing, exactly what you have, a mirror image. Can we show you what we've done? Who's going to say no to that?
Right.
It makes all the sense in the world.
Awesome.
Before we move on to the next slide, Gary, we have a question on Facebook that I guess relates back to the second bullet point with the buying atmosphere. And just a quick reminder, anybody who is watching us on Facebook, please feel free to type any questions in the comment, come up live here. And anybody who is on Zoom with us, feel free to interrupt and ask any questions or put it in the chat if you'd like to. But Gary, the question was, when you prospect a customer or a potential customer and you know what they ultimately need, or at least you believe you know what they ultimately need, do you recommend trying to sell them on that product or service, or start small and work their way up the ladder?
Neither. What I'm trying to do is develop a relationship. And what I want to do is go in there, and I have some questions prepared based on the research that I've done. But those questions, let's face it, it's to try to just initiate a conversation. You want to get a conversation. Think of it as, we're not here in a sales situation. We're here we just could be meeting for any reason whatsoever. It could be a cocktail party, could be a backyard barbecue. I'm meeting with someone. I want to have a relationship with them. Certainly, I want to have some really good questions so I can get them to talk, so I can get the conversation going. But ultimately, you want them to talk. You want them to ultimately say, this is what's important to me now, really what the conversation should be focused on. It shouldn't be me going in thinking, I'm here to try to sell you this because I know this is what you need. No, I'm here to try to help you. I think I know what you need, but I'm not 100% sure. The only way, I think I know what you need based on my research, but really what I want to know is I want to hear from you. What's important to you? And it's so important to do it that way.
That's always been my preferred approach also. I don't want to tell you what you need. I want to ask the right questions so you figure it out yourself.
Awesome.
It's always better if you ask me for the service instead of me telling you what you should be doing.
Right.
Now we're coming to the end here. Actually, one thing I asked Gary was, if he could recommend any books or items that, someone could check out. And he basically said, this is where you want to go. Jeffrey Gatomer's book list. So we put the link there if folks want to copy that down. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, Gary, but it seems like everything on his list is exactly what you would recommend someone to check out.
Oh, everyone. Yeah. Jeffrey's the best. He's been doing this forever. I started following him over 30 years ago. He's the best there is. He's great. And whenever I get a chance to see him, I see him. Learn anything, but what it does is it, his style, he's like a comedian. And, I just picked so many things up that I think, geez, I I've done that in a while. You know, it makes all the sense in the world, but he's the best there is.
Awesome, awesome. So I'll definitely be going there and checking out some of his stuff. So that's it for the presentation as a whole. If anyone has any questions, I know we had a good one from Facebook, but if anyone has any questions on the call for Gary, you can kind of throw them his way now. And I'll throw one your way, actually, Gary. For someone who is not engaging, let's say I own a business, but I'm an introvert. I don't really like talking to people. It's not really my strong suit. How can I become a better salesperson if I don't really have that desire to build relationships or engage? Or is it a lost cause?
No, it's not a lost cause at all. And it's not a lost cause if you think about some of the principles that I've been advocating today, Zach, and that's that, you know, you've got to look at it as not a sales situation. You really have to look at it as it's having a conversation with someone. You know, I want to sit down. Everybody's comfortable having a conversation. Doesn't matter how introverted you are. You want to have a conversation with, but what you want to do, I use a term, I call it leading someone down a path without them realizing they're being led. I have an objective. What I really want to do is get that person to say, yes, this is what I need. And you know, sales can be very, very intimidating. There's no question about it. And you're going to meet with a lot of people that are very, very dominating. I want to tell a quick story. One of my very first sales jobs. So I get all this training on exactly what to do, what kind of questions to ask, what to present, how to present, and so forth. And I'm meeting with someone who had a very dominating personality. I'm telling is great about us. I'm asking all these questions, and every single answer, every response was the same way. We're fine. We don't need any of that. I've got all this. I've got a good handle on it. We don't need you, and so forth. And I'm thinking, great, where do I go from here? All this great training that I got, guess what? Doesn't work. And I was totally intimidated by this person. I'm the first to admit it. I don't know what made me think of it this way, but I finally got so frustrated, I figured, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do to try to open up the conversation. I noticed that they were holding a pen. And I said, I want for that's actually not a pen that you're holding. It's a magic wand. And I just want to ask you something. If you could, because all I've heard is that everything is great, what you do is great, and you don't have any need for anything else, fine. If you could change anything at all about how you run your operation, what would you do? Now, the key is to shut up, let them talk. Again, this gets back to a lot of sales and psychology, right? And they would say, well, you know, maybe I would do such and such, you know, maybe I would like to improve in this area and so forth. And then I had an opening. And I was great. Could you tell me more about, you know, I was very intimidated. I was very introverted when I first started. I wasn't like this. And I came out of that with a sales cycle, and they actually did become one of my best customers. And years later, we would joke around all the time. I would kid this woman that, you know, geez, you really made me shaking. And she said, well, that's what I do to salespeople. I hate them all, and I would eat them up alive. And I said, well, you know, I really appreciate that I was able to help you and so forth. So I don't know if that answers the question, but hopefully it does.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Do we have any other questions on the line? Or Kevin, did you have anything on Facebook?
I think we've done it pretty well. At least on Facebook, I think we've covered everything. On Zoom, do we have any guests right now that would like to ask any questions?
I think we're good
Well,
there.
Gary, I guess you crushed it. You must have done something right if the questions are this quiet right now.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, Kevin, that, you know, I do two things in general. Number one, I provide overall workshops, and I did one earlier this year for the Chamber of Commerce. It was very successful. And then I also provide what I call customized workshops. And this is really what I pride myself on, because we saw it's meeting with an organization and trying to understand, this is how we sell, you know, what are your objectives? What are your challenges? And I'll put together some ideas that I think can help.
That's great. I mean, that sounds like a valuable resource that a lot of businesses could probably use, whether they realize or want to admit it or not. and even going back to the beginning where, on one of the first slides, and you were talking about just asking, what is your value proposition? What does make you stand out? What does make your organization great? It sounds like such a basic question. It's so obvious, and many don't.
Yeah, they don't.
It's
Yeah,
amazing how difficult that question is sometimes.
absolutely. And if I can, I just wanted to add, I just thought of this, one more response on that last question, that I'm introverted. How do I, create that conversation going and so forth? And there's another technique that I've used, and shame on me for not mentioning it earlier, but probably the most powerful sales technique that's been the most successful for me my entire career is humor. And what I mean by that is I've always found, with some salesperson, they put up their guard and so forth. If I can do something to make them laugh, I'm 80% there, because what I've done is I've lowered the guard and I've made it much more conversational, much more relaxing. And, it's not easy to do that. The old adage is, you make fun of yourself, of course, but I'll look, a lot of visual, I'll try to look and try to get as much information as I can. And I'll do something to come up with something that makes it humorous. So all of a sudden we're laughing. And when we can do that, it makes all the difference in the world. And I strongly suggest about the value of humor in a conversation and how important that is.
I think it's great advice for someone who's been blessed with such a great sense of humor like myself. Um, for someone, I don't know how you get around that, but it's good advice for some of us.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you so much, Gary.
Yeah, I got to do with that, huh?
I didn't mean for us to end this with a lie, but it happens sometimes. Really appreciate everyone who's watching on Facebook, those who joined us live, and we'll be back in August with some more Thursday thoughts for you all to join and engage in. But again, thank you. And you can also, of course, reach Gary at salestips101.com. We also have his email and phone number on the screen as well. And then, as always, we do our 20-minute consultation. So if anyone needs that, you can just email us at energy@navitasmarketing.com. Everybody have a great Thursday.
Consultation is a conversation. It's not a sales pitch.
There you go.
Right. Indeed. Indeed.
Well, I want to thank Zack and Kevin and everybody who's joined, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And I hope to hear from as many of you as possible, because if you're interested in some of these, how to address these challenges, I know I can help you very much.
Awesome. Everyone have a great day.